Good morning. Welcome to this online service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington. I'm Irv Lachow, a member of the UUCA Board and a worship associate, and it's my pleasure to be here with you this morning. We've had a bittersweet week, saying goodbye to our beloved Reverend Teresa, while looking forward with anticipation toward our new called senior minister, Reverend Amanda. In the meantime, we're fortunate to have Walter Clark's compassionate leadership, and I'm looking forward to 2 lay-led services this month. Speaking of Reverend Walter, after you listen to his wonderful sermon today, please join us for our virtual happy hour, where you can connect with your colleagues and find a virtual home away from home. Today's call to worship is a statement from Frederick Douglass. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are people who want crops without plowing the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the roar of its many waters. The struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both. But it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Now please join me as we do the reading to light the chalice. We gather together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world.
Good morning, friends. It's time once again for our Time for All Ages. And I thought to celebrate Independence Day, 4th of July, that was yesterday, I thought I would tell you the story of my favorite American hero. Her name is Frances Perkins. Many of you might not have heard of Frances Perkins. She's not one of those glorious war generals like Washington, and she didn't lead crowds of millions like Martin Luther King Jr. But the work she did still carries us today. Frances Perkins was born in 1880 in Boston. She was the daughter of a teacher and the granddaughter of a teacher as well. Teaching was in her family's blood. She went to college in a time where not a lot of women were encouraged to go to college. And not only did she graduate from college, she graduated majoring in both physics and chemistry. Not only that, she was her class president. And while she was in college, Frances Perkins became involved in what's called the suffrage movement. Now, many of you may not know that suffrage is what they called a movement when women were trying to gain the right to vote. See, at that time in the United States, the early 1900s, women were not allowed the vote. And Frances Perkins didn't think that was right. And the one thing I can tell you about Frances Perkins is that if she didn't think something was right, she was going to raise her voice about it. Frances, after college, moved to New York City, and one day she was having tea with some of her professional friends when they heard a loud commotion from outside the window. They heard the whistles and bells of fire engines going into the city. It wasn't too far, and Frances wanted to know what was going on, so she followed those fire engines, hitching up her skirts and running down the streets. And what she saw was horrible. A factory had caught on fire. It was a textile factory. They made shirts, and it was called the Triangle Shirtwaist Manufacturing Company. It was a company Frances was familiar with. She had often butt heads with them in working a little bit with workers' rights. See, the conditions in the Triangle Shirtwaist Manufacturing Company were horrible. People were crowded in, tight, working long days, 10, 12, 15 hours. Often they were made to work 7 days a week. And in order to make sure that they produced as much as possible, the people who ran the company locked the doors so that workers could not leave the building. And most of these workers at the time were women. When she got down to the factory, most of it was engulfed in flames. And there was nothing that anyone could do. And 146 people died that day. And Frances swore that she would not let that happen. And she fought tirelessly for the rights of workers. She joined the New York City Labor Force Committee and got them to cap work weeks to 54 hours a week. Previously, they were uncapped. She fought so much on this committee to do so much that was right, that she caught the attention of a certain New York legislature at the time. His name was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. One day, Franklin Delano Roosevelt would become President of the United States of America, 1933. And when he became president, he called his friend Frances Perkins, and he asked her to be on his cabinet. Now, the cabinet that the president has, it's not like a wooden box that you store plates in. It's a team of advisors. Cabinet's just the fancy name for a team of advisors to the president. Not only was Frances Perkins being asked to be on this cabinet, she was the very first woman to ever serve on a presidential cabinet. And she had done this just a little more than 10 years after women had secured the right to vote. When she was a part of the cabinet, she was assigned to their labor team, the Committee on Labor, Secretary of Labor. And she brought to President Roosevelt some ideas on how working conditions should be across the board. It was all new ideas that never were tried before. These new ideas were a big deal. They included capping work hours a week to 40 hours. It included 2 days off per week per person, a weekend. And it made sure that there was a minimum amount that people could be paid per hour to work, a minimum wage. She also wanted to make sure that everyone who retired would be taken care of. She recommended a government check to people once they were retired so they could stay secured, a social security. All of these new ideas were a big deal, and it became what was known as the New Deal that Franklin Delano Roosevelt passed. These things are still with us today. 40-hour work weeks, weekends, minimum wage, Social Security. And one thing I want to remind you is that in America, we weren't always like that. We had horrible conditions for workers for a while. Some would say we have horrible conditions now. Here's why she's my American hero. Because she saw something that was wrong. And she saw how it could be right. Being American is about seeing how things could be better and working to make a change. So I hope one of you out there listening, maybe more than one of you, will see something wrong in your lifetime. And you'll work hard to make it better for everyone who's affected by it. Because that's what my hero did. And I would love for you to be my hero too. A prayer this morning comes from Sean Parker Dennison. It's called Wrestling Like Jacob. Please join me now in the spirit, meditation, and prayer. Spirit of life and love, today I wrestle with angels. Perhaps, like Jacob, I will win this fight. But I know full well that nothing is without cost. I will be changed by this struggle. I will never be the same. Today, I open my heart to that mysterious beauty we call love and try to comprehend its stubborn, grandiose vastness. It has taken at least half a lifetime to welcome such love into my own life, to accept that I am wholly and relentlessly loved, regardless of my faults and errors, and that I will forever be loved that extravagantly. Never, never will love fail me. But even more, love will never fail. Today I struggle to stretch myself so that I can hold for even one brief moment a vision of love that fails no one. A love that can redeem the irredeemable, comfort those whose suffering appears beyond comfort, and when rejected, grow ever more vast, ever more patient, ever more ready to forgive. And struggling to know this unfathomable love, may my heart be stretched and opened, making room for more love, ever more love. Please take these words with you in a time of silent reflection. My daughter is currently taking a summer class for high school. She attends this specialty center, and in order for her to take all of those specialty classes that she can, she needs to get some of the standard curriculum out of the way during the summer. This is a practice she's been doing ever since she enrolled. Normally it's a gym class that she takes, but this summer the class that she took was American history. Now when she told me this, my first thought was, I wonder if they're going to actually tell the whole story of American history. I mean, granted, it's been a while since I was in high school, but I remember when I was taught American history so long ago that I was taught the Civil War was about states' rights. I was taught that slaves weren't treated that bad because they were property and you needed to take care of your property. And when it came to the history of the Native Americans, there was a little bit about some supper around November, and that was about it. We just kind of thought the Indians just gave the land willingly. And I want you to know that I was educated in a Pennsylvania private school, a North Pennsylvania private school. So this had nothing to do with a odd Southern agenda or grave public underfunding of schools. No, this was just good old American whitewashing of history. So I was glad to know, and I'm sure you'll be glad to know too, that my daughter's class has been talking about such horrifying things as the triangle slave trade, the abhorrent conditions that slaves endured. They even taught about Bacon's Rebellion, something I didn't learn about till I was in my 30s. And she got all of this within the first week of class. She's not just being taught those happy highlights that I was taught so long ago. She's being taught about the sins of our country, the sins of our forefathers, the sins that we are still atoning for today. Which kind of makes celebrating July 4th kind of awkward for me. I mean, with all of the issues we'd had of late with our country, the systemic corruption we're hearing about, and the sheer ineptitude of some of our people who are our leaders, the systems of oppression that have been disenfranchising black and brown people, not just for decades, but for centuries. And these systems are still operating as designed today. And there seems to be just the most basic lack of empathy for the middle class and the poor in this country from those who are in power. Why would I want to celebrate any of this? We seem to be living in a moment right now that equates pride in America with pride for its worst aspects. I mean, we see all of these self-proclaimed patriots who drape themselves in American flags, who in one breath will denounce Black Lives Matter as they're talking about the wonderful systems of America. They will tell protesters to shut up and to go back home where you came from, while in the same breath talking about free speech. And anyone who disagrees with these patriots is called un-American and is told that they stand against everything that our founding fathers fought so hard to achieve. If that's being a patriot, I don't want any part of it. And if that's being American, I don't want to celebrate it. But I think we can all agree that being American, being a patriot, it's more than just some blind obedience to
to a flag or other symbols of our nation. There's this quote from journalist Sidney J. Harris that helped me to parse a little bit the definition between a patriot and a nationalist. Harris says, the difference between patriotism and nationalism is that a patriot is proud of what their country does, and a nationalist is proud no matter what their country does. And I like where it's going, but I only kind of agree with half of the sentiment. I certainly believe that a nationalist is someone who will turn a blind eye to the sins of their country and just say that that's the way things are. They'll be proud no matter what laws the country breaks or no matter what morals the country is lacking. But I believe a patriot is not just proud of what its country does, but a patriot sees the possibilities of what their country could be. An American patriot believes in the core values that were founded by the foundation of this country. It sees the flaws in how they've been executed, those core values, and it strives to make them better. So my daughter and I, we have this morning routine. First thing I do when I get up is I get dressed, and the two of us go out for a walk for about an hour. And actually, this is part of our journey, our path is where I'm on. And every morning since she's been taking the class, I've been asking her what she's learned the day before. So I'm kind of auditing this history class for her. And what was really fascinating for me was listening to her talk about the Revolutionary War and all of the tensions that led up to the Revolutionary War. She was talking about how the colonists were upset with the lack of representation in the British government, what was being going on, and they had petitioned King George to have more representation, and King George ignored them. And so what did they do? They started having protests and petitions, and they started marching, and when that didn't work, they started boycotting things, and they got a little unruly, and then when that didn't work, they declared independence, and they started a war. It's a story that when she told it to me, I realized I had heard over and over and over again throughout our country's history. It's the story of the disenfranchised making a plea for equality. And that plea is either dampened or ignored. They amplify their voices through marches, petitions, and other means of visible public support. And when they are still ignored, they begin to take action through boycotts and strikes and other ways that disrupt critical financial systems, or just systems in general. And then finally, they take action through whatever means they can, and often those means are labeled as destructive. Dumping tea in the harbor, revolting against the slave owners and keepers. Even the suffragettes threw rocks and broke windows. Over and over again, we see this pattern of disenfranchisement, pleas for attention, visible public awareness, disruption of systems, and finally destructive behavior through such acts as the Revolutionary War, the abolitionists, the suffragettes, civil rights, marriage equality. All of these systems, these happenings use the same playbook. It's like that protest chant that we hear oh so often. This is what democracy looks like. The fifth principle of Unitarian Universalism is, and I quote, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and society at large. So let me say that again. It's the right of conscience, the use of the democratic process within our congregations, and society at large. The use of the democratic process. Notice how it doesn't say the need to vote. It says the democratic process. Now, for all of those of you who had children in RE and know the sing-song part, their actual quote is, "We believe that all persons should have a vote about things that concern them." So our children are hearing the word vote in there, but what they're getting is shorthand for what it's really about, because it's about things that concern them. And that's what the principle is really about. The fifth principle is about having a say in things that concern you and systems that are not doing what they need to treat people equally, fairly, justly. In democracy, people have a say in how they are governed. And that authority to govern is shared by everyone in that system. It's in our church polity, and it is the basics of democracy. Everyone has a voice. Part of that democratic process is making sure that the voices are heard. Voting is used to keep good systems going. And when those systems become corrupted, if voting does not take care of securing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, sometimes you need to address where the system is broken. Sometimes you need to take action to repair it. Sometimes you need to destroy the whole system to do it. If you think about it, this idea of rebelling against oppression is the most American thing you can do. It's why we're here. Americans were colonists who were fleeing religious or political oppression. One of my many mentors on this path to ministry is the Reverend David Hicks McPherson. He's the Reverend Emeritus in the Richmond congregation. And one of the things he always used to say to me is that ours is a religion for the world. Unitarian Universalism is a religion for the world. Unitarian Universalism is a faith based on hope and promise. It's a faith that demands that we hold the world accountable for its actions when it is not doing its best to help everybody be the best they can be. When you see people protesting in the streets, marching to Lafayette Square, that's our faith in action. Demanding that black and brown bodies not be killed on sight and fighting systems that would do that is our faith in action. Boycotting certain businesses because you don't believe in their practices, because they don't support a woman's right to choose, or they discriminate against LGBTQ persons, or because they treat their workers so abhorrently. That boycott is our faith in action. When those idols of hatred and oppression are torn asunder from the public square, ripped down from the pedestals upon which they were once worshipped, when those come down, that is our faith in action. It's the democratic process. It's making sure voices are heard. And that, my friends, is the true sign of an American patriot. So hang your flags out. Celebrate this country. Love it deeply for all of its flaws, for its horrible sins of its past. And know that just because it is checkered, just because it is flawed, does not mean that there are not good bones to it. Be a patriot. Work to make it better. May it be so.
One thing that the recent pandemic has taught us is that we are the church. We may be away from our building for a while, but we still find sanctuary in each other and the connections that we maintain. The work of this congregation continues. Through covenant groups, religious education, our delightful music program, and our social justice ministries, and our pastoral care team, the mission of this congregation continues through these times where it seems it is needed most. We are temporarily suspending our Share the Plate program to focus on all of these ministries of our community. By giving to UUCA, you invest in the spiritual center that keeps us all connected. You invest in all of us. You can mail or drop off the check payable to UUCA with the word offering or pledge in the memo line, or you can give online at the church website, www.uucava.org. Click on the donate button on the top of the page. Finally, you can donate using the mobile app Give Plus. Enter the zip code 22204, choose our church, UUCA, and follow the prompt to give as much as you can. And now a reminder, as we dedicate this week's offering, let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts with us, for we are enriched by their giving. Let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others.
So, for our closing words, I was trying to find the perfect words to talk about going forward and fighting for justice in this world that still rang true to the spirit of America. And I found these words. I'm going to change some of the text because it's old. I'm going to use more inclusive language. But this is what I found, and I want you to take these words with you. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal, that all are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among humanity, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter it or abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundations upon such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Go in peace.